as we've talked about on the podcast, certainly over the last year or so, the pandemic has really thrust HR into the spotlight, and we've seen HR step up and have to respond. And so what do you think that means for HR in 2021?
Yeah, I think the term I used in the article was all eyes are on HR, which is a term I borrowed from Katarina Berg, Spotify's Chief People Officer. But I think it really shows that this year 2020 of all years was the year that, senior executives and organizations were looking to HR to help them navigate through the crisis. And in many respects, I think HR has stepped up to the plate. I think there's countless examples of how HR has delivered, especially those functions that are well led, that have strong stakeholder equity, that have people analytics teams, and have the ability to do continuous listening and do more pulsing with employees that were either affected by the pandemic. Maybe they were critical workers and still having to go into an office or a place of work, or they were suddenly having to work remotely, whether they're employees or managers as well. Suddenly managers having to manage remote teams. Again, I think we've talked about this before. There's many observers of the space have said that the CHRO has almost played the similar role to that the CFO did in the global financial crisis. It's a pivotal role within the organization, and I think that's good. And we've had some powerful examples on the podcast. Renil Kumar, remember, from Wipro, talked about how suddenly they had to manage 150,000 remote workers in India alone. Chin Yin Ong from Grab was on, and she told us about how they've been really intentional about helping people collaborate remotely. And then Diane Gerson, of course, from IBM or then from IBM, talks about how they'd run a company-wide jam to understand employee preferences when it came, once it's safe to return to the office. And they'd found that, certainly in IBM, people really appreciate the office as a place to connect and build out their networks and collaborate together. So, there's lots of good work that HR's doing. There's been a plethora of studies that I referenced in the article from the likes of Deloitte, Accenture, IBM, the World Economic Forum, where he talks about on the future role of HR. Definitely recommend listeners, reading those reports. I think there's a lot that you can pull out of those. It's clear that HR has a unique role to play. And it's an opportunity, I think, that it needs to grasp with both hands. One of the big features of the pandemic for me has been how many organizations have prioritized employee well-being above everything else. They have right to do so. And hopefully that will continue in the future, that employee well-being, employee experience, putting the human at the center of thinking when it comes to business will actually carry on. And who better to play that role than HR? But we're going to talk a little bit about HR skills and capabilities, I know, later on. And HR still, as a profession, has a long way to go to do that. But they've stepped up to the plate in the last year as a function. Proud to be part of that, a part of the field, and I've got every confidence it will continue to do so.
In this series, we will be speaking to a range of senior leaders who are pushing a data-driven and digital HR agenda. Make sure that you subscribe via your podcast app of choice and also via our YouTube channel for free and regular interviews with the digital HR leaders of the future.